In the previous video, we came to the conclusion that the number of COVID-19 infected people in Japan was originally small, so it was relatively easy to suppress. However, it is unclear why there were so few. If we dare to look for a reason, we can consider that Japan is an island nation isolated in the Pacific Ocean. Similarly, it is recognized that the number of COVID-19 cases is low in island countries such as Taiwan and New Zealand. However, there is a big difference between Japan and the other two countries in terms of economic size and population. Comparing GDP, Japan is worth $5 trillion, Taiwan $668 billion, and New Zealand $206.9 billion, and the population is 125 million in Japan, 23 million in Taiwan, and 4.78 million in New Zealand. It would be reasonable to assume that if the economy is large enough, the number of people in contact with each other will have to increase because that is how much labor is needed, and if the population is large, the number of infected people is also likely to increase. But the quarantine measures in the two countries other than Japan were thorough. If population density and economic scale are not taken into account, the quarantine measures in Taiwan and New Zealand are overwhelmingly superior. The other two countries implemented urban blockades with compulsory force, whereas Japan did not. The fact is that Japan could not have done so even if it wanted to, because there is no law in Japan that provides for a state of emergency clause. In Japan, a state of emergency has been declared several times. It was also issued during the Olympics. However, the emergency declarations were not enforceable, so all the restrictions on behavior were banal requests from the government to the people. Yet, for some reason, the Japanese people took the requests quite seriously and acted accordingly. For example, restaurants refrained from opening until 8 p.m., and from serving alcoholic beverages. Department stores and shopping malls also reduced their business hours. Almost all adults in the country wore masks at all times and kept their hands and fingers clean. Alcohol disinfectants were available everywhere, including at the entrances of stores and hospitals, and many people had them at home and in their private cars. This kind of behavior has not changed at all even now that the infection is under control. One of the comments from people overseas was that Japanese people are vulnerable to peer pressure. There is no denying the existence of peer pressure. However, in my personal opinion, it is more realistic to think that most Japanese people are afraid of being a nuisance to others. If I am infected, it is my own fault, but I do not want to spread the infection to others. To avoid causing trouble to others means to refrain from asserting oneself. For better or worse, the Japanese may be a race that does not or cannot assert itself. The conclusion of this article seems to be that this kind of conscious culture is still alive in Japan.